Together for Alex.
Thanks, man. Hello. First of all, I kind of wanted to know if you guys have any idea or have seen any of the work that we do. Maybe raise your hands. Okay. Because I won't talk too much about the work that we do because you can see it on the website. But I'll give you a very quick overview. I have a company called Tangible Interaction that I started about 4 years ago, and then recently we started another kind of like a part of the company called Tangible Intervention. We specialize in doing. It's really hard to explain what we do. Like when people ask me, I usually just like start like doubting myself and how to explain it. But the best I can do is to say that we create interactive installations for people. So in the commercial space, we work with brands to bring brands to life through some kind of like an interesting installation. A lot of times that involves lights. We do a lot of like software programming. We do electronics. We do all kinds of stuff to create like an interesting space. So if you see on this slide right now, we started with a project called Zygote Interactive Wall, which is the one on the top left or right? Left. It was the first project I started working on in 2006, and it was this large inflatable ball that reacts when you touch it. And the idea was to use it at concerts, and the goal was to bring attention, kind of like a little bit out, from the stage to where people were, like partying, or and me like make people like really part of the show and not just spectators. So that kind of like took off, and then from there we started doing the graffiti wall. We started doing lighting system. We started working with musicians. We did a lot of work during the Olympics on the BC Pavilion and the Vancouver House. We worked on 16 projects during that time, and then we slowly started to work on other projects that were just like exclusively our interest. It was more on the idea of creating like art installations for people, with no brand messaging or anything like that, more to create a really beautiful, or beautiful to me, experience. And then we started working for Illuminate Yellowtown. We got a commission to work on designing a park for the city of Richmond, which is the model that you see on the far right. We worked with the Vancouver Aquarium too, but that comes left. We work with the Vancouver Museum. We recently launched a project with the Aquarium. We did a commission piece with the Governor General for the library. So we done a lot of work, and everything is very, very different. But like I said, I'm not going to talk to you about my portfolio. I just want to talk to you about more about the creative side of things and how things come to life. So there's this quote that I was reading this interview to Philip Stark, and he said something that I thought it was really cool, because I quite identified what he was saying. He said, I'm not intelligent, or at least not in the normally accepted definition. I have other talents that are totally respectable: an extraordinary intuition, a diagonal mental structure. I find solutions without even knowing how or why I found them. I do what I can. That's all we can ask. So when I read this, I just felt like that really defined who I am. And like I said, I'm going to be talking about creativity, and then all the stuff that I'm going to be saying, it just reflects my own experience, and there's no research backing me up or anything like that. It's just what I've been learning throughout the years. So one of the questions that I get more often asked when people see the work that we do, and through the website or just by experiencing, is like, how did you come up with that idea? And in my really short solution is, well, it's kind of like the idea came to me. I kind of don't really want to bore people with my thinking about how the idea came up. And actually, I never really thought about it too much until actually I put together this presentation. And what I realized is that the idea of creativity, or just the name or the word creativity, is not it's actually a word that creativity doesn't really exist. Because creativity assumes that there's like this action of creating something out of nothing. You know, something that has a very like a godlike idea. You know, I think it's a word that is full of religious content, where, you know, out of nothing, you know, man was created, or like, and the same thing is applied to people. You know, now creators are put into this godlike stature where people think it's like this thing that it just comes to you, and it's kind of like this magic act where you come with an idea. And I think there's no doubt that when you come up with an idea and just something comes sparked in your head, it kind of feels like magic. But I think there's no real magic to it. So you may think that if it's not creation, you know, the creation doesn't exist, is it evolution of ideas? And I think it's not evolution of ideas. I think, you know, you can evolve, once you have the idea, you can evolve into a more complex concept. You can, you know, make it better. You can simplify it or complicate it, or just make it, you know, something different from it. But for me, coming up with an idea is more of a chemical reaction. It's something that just happens in your brain. And, you know, I like when I was looking for what a chemical reaction definition was, and I like this one that says it's the process where two or more simple substances combine to form a more complex substance. And, you know, the same, you know, kind of like the way hydrogen mixes with oxygen to form water. I think in a way, what I see is like things are stored in you know, in the back of your brain. All of a sudden, through some kind of a stimulus, things mix together to create something new, you know, that idea. But it's not that idea came from nothing. It's kind of like the components were always there. They just needed to react to form something. So I like the idea of thinking that a creator is more like a bartender, you know, like picking up bottles, mixing them together to create a drink that is new. But he's really forming the drink. He's not inventing it. You know, it's not that you're inventing, because again, it's the same idea that creation and invention is something that just comes out of nothing. You think when you make something like a new drink, you're just putting your knowledge, you know, you tasted 2 drinks, you think they're going to work together, you put them together, and then it works, right? And it's based on your experience, your knowledge, and, you know, all the stuff you've been through. So the other question that I also get asked is like, well, who inspires you, or why inspires you? And I have a hard time explaining that too, and I don't feel like I'm inspired by other people's work, though I deeply admire what they do, or you know, I envy their thinking or stuff like that. I wish I could be there, or I'm stimulated by it. Inspiration, I think, is a direct thing that is that thing that will triggers your brain to do something, you know, to make something new. And again, if you look up the definition of inspiration, there's also a lot of religious connotation to the word, almost like this divine act where you're being illuminated by God and you're inspired and doing something, I guess, in a kind of like magical way. But I think, again, there's no magic in it. It's something very normal that happens in at least in my brain. So what inspires me, I think, is I'm a natural kind of like problem solver. And if I try to simplify things to its basic thing, I think, you know, like creativity is kind of one aspect of it, but really what I like doing is I like solving problems. And these problems can be, you know, it could be a brief for a client for, you know, promoting, you know, or trying to create like a special kind of space. Or it could be a brief that I created in my head, thinking, well, I would like to do something in an open space where people can interact with a piece, and it's you know, they feel like they're in a very 3D environment, and there's, you know, interacting with light, and their motion is going to trigger something. I created some kind of a problem, and then I come up with a solution because my brain wants to solve that problem. So this could be a kind of an annoying quality. If you're a friend of mine, you're just looking for a year to listen to, because on the back of my head, I'm just trying to solve the problem that you have. Well, all you want is just for somebody to listen. But that's kind of the way it happens. So the things that really inspire me are problems, and but also I'm very inspired by kind of like raw materials. And when I say raw materials, I mean I love going to like a metal shop, or going to see people working wood, or when I go to a restaurant, I love sitting at the bar and being able to see how chefs cut the meat, or like bake the stuff and do things, because I find all that stuff very, very inspiring. Other things that inspire me are like processes, like fabrication process, how a water jet cuts and how it operates, and how people operate the machines, and how CNC works. And I just love anything that has a lot of like craftsmanship. I just love seeing working, how they use their hands and how they do what they do. Like in the same way, I get really inspired when I talk to people about. I'm very interested in hearing anybody talk about anything, because I always feel that anybody that's passionate about anything has a lot to give, and I really feed on that. It's just this energy that you pass, pass from person to person. So other things that inspire me are just like conversations, like at the studio, the guys that work with me were just talking about stuff, bouncing ideas, and then boom, all of a sudden something new came up. So there's many things that inspire me, but usually the things that inspire me are like that. They're kind of like more raw materials. They're not finished pieces. And what happens is when you get inspired, it's kind of like that chemical reaction that I was saying. Is like all of a sudden you heard something, and you saw something and then two things in your brain kind of connect to form an idea. And this idea can actually be very raw, very small. And then that's when actually evolution comes to place, where you take that little golden nugget and you start like forming it into something that is bigger and better and has more shape, and you can explain it and stuff like that. But the idea itself, I think it's a very, very like primitive reaction that happens in your head, and it probably goes back to being in an emergency situation, like a lion is coming towards you and there's stones around you, and then you grab one and you throw it to it, and it's like maybe nobody has done it before, but in that moment you had to do something, and then your brain is wired to do that kind of stuff. I think some brains are more wired to be more creative than other ones. I think I'm naturally, when I was born, kind of like if I was a bee in a colony, probably I was just assigned being creative, because I have been like this my whole life, and I always enjoyed it very much. So kind of like to put it all together, I think what I do is I kind of like inhale the world. I just feed off it, like people and things and places and flavors, and I just kind of exhale, like I'll breathe out new ideas. And I'm really thankful to the world that surrounds me that is like that, and thankful that I came up to be very like sensitive to all these things, because it's a process that I really, really enjoy. And talking about the process, I think creativity doesn't, though I kind of like I try to take the word creativity apart, I still have to use it all the time. I wish I could say like forming ideas or something like that, but it's just no. People won't understand what I'm saying. So I think creativity is for us in the work that we do is a process. It's not. It doesn't happen one day when like we sit down, let's come up with an idea. You come up with an idea, and then the rest it's just work. I think we apply creativity to everything we do, and and the guys that work with me probably know this better than anybody else, because I always push. I always push to find a different way of doing things. And apply creativity to create the installations that we do. So let's say when we have an opportunity, we have the first kind of like a little golden nugget, which is the idea, but then I don't want to just make that idea happen. I want the process of making an idea happen be very. I want it to be interesting for us. I want it, to be a good story that we can tell. I wanted to learn something. So we usually at the end what happens is we just kind of complicate things by approaching something in a way that we haven't done it before, and the process is hard, and it takes more time, and sometimes you just struggle, but I think at the end you just come out of it having learned something like that is new, and actually goes back to your brain, and it becomes another source that later on can connect with something else. So like this could be, let's say, I wanted to show you this project we just launched. for the aquarium, and Rebecca's here, who's a client. We're really excited about this project that we just launched, and really excited about the opportunity we had. There's not really many places in Vancouver that are actually open to they're actually commissioning pieces of this kind. There's not many places that as beautiful as this one where we can actually put a piece. So I'm really thankful that we had this chance to do this. But like, again, we work in collaboration with Joseph Wood. He did all the origami. We got together. He had an idea of doing jellyfish. We started talking about doing lights. All of a sudden, we had this idea of creating this light installation where it would be like hanging jellyfish from the ceiling, and then lights would animate and people would interact with it and stuff like that. Okay, so we could have solved this by just hanging jellyfish, and like Mark, who's at the back, can help a lot in putting this stuff together. Say, hey, next time, joking, he said we should just put thumbtacks on the ceiling and then hang these jellyfish. And then, but no, we didn't do that. We worked for 2 months on creating this truss system, all made out of metal, 154 pieces? Yeah, 154 pieces, 450 links that link all these pieces together. It's like big, massive puzzle. And we use something called parametric design, which is you just design the structure in 3D, and then through values you can change the shape, you can change how things connect, you can change everything. And it's something that not many people are doing in the world, I would say. And then, we had 2 months to it. I talked to Ray, who was the lead designer and programmer on this project, about getting, doing it this way. And he was like, right, getting like on board with the idea. And then we just started doing something that we had no idea how to do. And we learned it, and we did it, and we put it together in like a record time. And it was really a really complicated project, but we're really proud of what we accomplished. So I'm going to show you a little video that the aquarium did, and it's actually quite beautiful. Is it playing? Okay. So you see the amount of work. This is just the 3 days that we're installing it. We spent from 5 p.m. until 6 a.m. for doing 3 days, 6 or 7 people putting it all together. And it's like a massive puzzle where all the pieces are together, and all the pieces were labeled. They had to bring them together. They were cut out of aluminum. And then once 6 sections were put together, we had to wire them, then we had to raise them. So it was really a really intense process. There's music to it, but. And the aquarium did an amazing job of shooting this video. They had like 4 cameras shooting all the time. It was really insane. So well, you can hear the music. There you go. So there's a little bit of the end there of what it looked like. But now this piece is 60 feet long. It's quite huge, and when you go down the stairs to see it, it really feels like what we want to do is we want to create like a truss system that it would make people feel like they were under the water. That was the surface of the water, and then when the jellyfish light up, that will reflect on the surface, and that's exactly the way it feels when you're under there. So like I said, we applied creativity to the whole process. It was we learned tons about like methods of fabrication, about our programming, about everything, and all that stuff is something that we're definitely gonna use for our next project. So we took advantage in a way of the project to learn something that we didn't know before, and I think those are creative decisions that you make every day. Like like I was saying, it's a process. It's not just one idea that you had. It's about like taking every project and then looking at everything you can do or you're about to do, and see how you can see it in a very creative way. Like just using those ideas and all the stuff that you have stored in the back of your head. Just bring it all together to bring the projects to life. The other thing that my work has really helped me doing is it's just discovering who I am and what I was meant to be, and this is been like a super interesting experience for me. Like I said, I was kind of like destined to be creative since I was very, very little. You know, like as a kid, I wasn't the kid who would want like toys. I want to actually take the toys apart or just take other stuff apart and put new things together. I would spend my days like, you know, making airplanes and ships and stuff like that. Not because I was into like airplanes or Navy things, not at all. I was actually more interested in the fact that you could make up something and then throw it in the air and then see it glide, you know, for a couple of minutes, and you know, just perfecting that. I thought it was just so beautiful. Just the act of that your hand could throw something in the air and see it glide, like defying gravity. Oops, sorry. Defying gravity. I felt like it was just unbelievable that you could do that. So, you know, that's how I spent my childhood, doing that kind of stuff. My favorite place to go wasn't the toy store, but it was like the hardware shop, the hardware shop, where, you know, just looking at tools, looking at materials, the same stuff that I do today. So, but what happened is, like, you know, I grew up and I kind of had to decide what to do, and I decided to study biology, and I thought, you know, it would be this very creative opportunity, which it wasn't. So I stopped like right away after like 2 years of studying. Then I started studying communication. But even before I started doing that, I started working with my dad as a graphic designer, just because kind of like it happened. And then I started working as a graphic designer, and then when I was 15 or 16, like computers started to come up and they were, you know, available and affordable, and I bought a computer. I could actually convince my mom to buy a computer and started using it for graphic design. And then before I knew it, when I was 19, I had a graphic design studio, and I was doing this like professionally, I guess, and I had clients, and for 10 years I did graphic design, and I just loved it. At the beginning I was fascinated with computers, all the things that you could do. I really sucked at drawing, so having a computer to help me with that was just like incredible. But in a way, I think like graphic design kind of distracted me really from what I loved doing before, and I felt like my pieces were a little bit static. You know, like you do a graphic design piece, you print it, and it's kind of like there. It's alive because people are handling, but it's kind of dead at the same time. It's just like it stops there. So I moved to Canada in '98, following my wife, and I started working, or, you know, studying interactive design, and I was really excited about the idea of using animation and using photography and using film and using audio and, you know, putting it all together to create an interactive experience. And again, I got really into it and really very excited, you know, again, through the use of computers, creating these experiences. But what I started to find is that the stuff that I was seeing, I couldn't see people experiencing it. The people were just very far away, were on the other side of the computer experiencing what I was putting together through another kind of like window. And then that felt really also disappointing. You know, I felt like very, very cold. I couldn't really connect with people. So, you know, I worked at a company called Tribal DDB, and I became associate creative director. And as a company, you know, years went by, we started doing more and more advertising projects. And I ended up being an advertising creative. And then I did it again, and I enjoyed it. And, you know, throughout my life, I always enjoyed, you know, doing what I do. I wasn't really. It's not that I suffer at all. I feel very lucky that I was always able to. I started working very early, but I was always able to work on what I like. But then what happened when I worked in advertising is that I kind of had to justify what I was doing. I never felt quite right about creating things to blatantly sell people stuff, because I don't believe in that. I don't think that's right. So, like I said, when looking back, though I always worked in the creative space, for some reason I always felt wrong, or I felt like I was just falling short in whatever I was doing. And it wasn't until like 4 years ago when I started, you know, with that ball that I showed you before, that I started to discover that was more my creative space. And that was a space where I was like starting to feel full in what I was doing. I was doing stuff that I was creating an experience where I could see people interact with my stuff. I could reach more people that I had ever reached before, because the stuff that we do now kind of like travels all over the world, and I find that amazing. That like I said before, it's just this little nugget, this little tiny idea that you just shaped into form, and then you launch into the world, and just take a life of its own, and it's kind of like you're actually touching people from a very, very distant place. And that's how it's really cool. I'm not the kind of guy that needs to be on the spotlight, but I love the project that we do to be on the spotlight. Yeah, it just feels so good that you make something that I think can travel so far. So I think what I realized is that it's very, very important to find the creative space that is true to you, that it actually really aligns to who you are. I think it's very easy to, as a creative, to get distracted or used to creativity for, I wouldn't say the wrong thing, but it just maybe not on the right place. Maybe your passion is in photography, but maybe you're a web designer, or your passion is in writing, but you're doing, you want to make a novel, but you're doing ad campaigns. So you're really using your creativity, but not in the space where you wanted to use it. So I think it's very important to kind of look into who you are and apply the creativity to that place, because I think you're going to feel good about it, and I think you're going to be doing a better job for yourself and for society too. Like, that's what you are meant to do. For me, my goal is to bring, for all the installations that we do, is to bring back this sense of wonder that I think is lost in people. I think we kind of lost that quality that we had, or as kids we had before, being just marveled by life and by things. And I think if we can create a project that brings that back even a little bit, I think that's I'll be very I'm very happy with that project. And then like I said, if you see, I love these photos. Somebody took this photo in Italy, and I think it just really shows that there's a bunch of dudes are probably in their 30s or 20s and 30s. They're not kids at all. But if you look at their faces, that's what I want to do. And that's, I think, how, I remember being a kid, I wanted to change the world, and I don't think I can change the world anymore, but I think I can change somebody's world for a second, one day in their life. And then when I look at them, I see that, for a second, I just made them feel that something that they weren't feeling before, and that makes me happy. It makes me feel like I'm doing what I was meant to do. And anyways, to close today, last Sunday, I was finishing my presentation. And I have two sons. They're 9 and 12 years old, and my younger son, went to have a shower, and then I hear, he comes to the shower, he goes to the bedroom, and then he closes the door, and a couple minutes later, I just go to check on him, because it's time to go to bed, and then when I opened the door, he was like that. So he was under this blanket on the ground. He had put another blanket on the ground, and then he put a heater and had over the blanket, and he was just drying himself with this hot air. He wasn't thinking about safety. But I'm amazed about how, like I said before, this creativity is in people, like when they're really, really young, and then they're not. He wasn't questioning what he was doing. He just did it. And when I said, "Hey, so how'd you come up with that idea?" And a couple months ago, we went to Whistler with my family, and my wife gave us this treat of going to this spa. So we also had a spa. It was like a really cool experience for them. And then they had a warm blanket, like an electric blanket. And then he was saying, "Well, Papi, I always dry myself with a dryer, and I always have my blanket on me." And then kind of like when the air got inside the towel, I remember when we went to the spa, and I had this electric blanket. So I thought, maybe I can make my own. So he did, right? So I said, wow, this is perfect. This is exactly what I need. So that shows how, he had this, he put together a couple of things that he had in his head, and then came up with something new. This is not the electric blanket. This is something new that I actually haven't ever seen before. So I don't want to say creative, but he formed this idea by putting these two things that he had into his brain. He felt the heat, and then all of a sudden his brain snapped into this little golden nugget of an idea, and then he did this. Thank you.
And do this. So, first question, anybody?
Be nice.
No, that's fine.
I was curious, what kind of a brief do you get from your clients? Like, do they ask, like, we need an installation interactive experience? Or is it like something not exactly that, and you kind of like offer them a solution that's interactive, or do you change your solution? It depends on what the problem is, or you just focus on interactive? I'm curious.
So the brief, there's two questions, right?
Yeah,
The brief, and then
exactly.
what was the other one?
The brief is like what, yeah, and sort of like, sometimes the solution does not need an interactive solution. Is it something, it's kind of like your answer to the brief. So do you expand your creative offering beyond just being interactive? Maybe it needs something else? Just how open is your kind of...
What do you mean with something else?
Maybe it's like, it doesn't need like sort of an interactive installation, it could be something else.
Okay. About the creative brief, luckily, one of the things that I forgot to say is that I think whatever you do will bring more of that, and that's has been my experience and what I want to do. You know, like if I want to do something, let's say if I want to get into light sculptures, I'm going to make light sculptures, so more of that work will come to me, and it really happens that way. I think we're really lucky that the briefs that we get are very open. People don't come to us saying we need like an installation that will do this and this and this and that. Well, let's say the brief that we got from the aquarium is like we want something like an interactive installation about luminescence that'll be cool for people to experience, stuff like that. And I think that was pretty much it, right? Wasn't it? Yeah. And I love those briefs because like there is like a space within you can work on, but it's not like, oh, we need a brief, the brief is something we need to sell this thing, or we need to be able to go through the gift shop and go home with this in their hand. It's like, I'll probably say no to a brief like that. So I think briefs for us are actually really, really open. And like I said, people see the work that we do, and luckily when they come to us, they're really like, oh, we love what you do, can you do something for us? And that's awesome, that's exactly the way I like it. In terms of, everything has to be interactive, no, not really. I don't really care if it's interactive or not. Other projects are interactive because we want people to be able to be part of them, just because of that, not because it's like we have interaction in our name. It's just because I like people to be able to modify them or touch them or be part of the project in some way, not just to look at it. But sometimes the interaction doesn't have to be something that you have to touch. Sometimes interaction could be like going to a place, looking at the project, and then make you feel part of it, because then you're interacting with the project even if you're not changing it. So that's the answer. Yeah. Okay.
Great. Next. Any other questions? No.
Hello. I had a really great time playing with those giant concert balls and
Thank
the
you.
concert series in Vancouver this past summer. And I was wondering how did you do that? Making the ball so light.
So
Having a ball so light. I'm a scientist on the side.
Okay. So that was kind of like a long process. Developing the project took like a year, especially because I had no idea what I was doing when I started. I just had this, like I said, like this idea of I received a brief, which was a festival in Italy for making. They wanted interactive installations for this festival. So that was kind of my brief, and I came my idea of using balls that would light up. So at the beginning, the lights were quite heavy, and then we made the balls larger, and we started using helium to make them like kind of float. And I think that added a lot to the to the installation itself, because now there's this thing that you just touch it and it just goes. and then and it's such a like massive ball. It's like bigger than a person. So being able to touch something that is bigger than you and changing it, I think creates kind of like a really cool experience. So there's helium inside.
Anyone else? Questions?
Your projects, do you do only client work, or do you sometimes, you guys have an idea and you just want to build it just because of the idea? So is there like kind of a percentage between client work and your own staff?
I would say that it is. We do a lot of work internally. We actually have something that is called R&D Fridays. Not every Friday, but we try to create projects for these R&D Fridays that we work on, and they're just internal things. Most of the stuff that we do, it wasn't initially a client project. It was something that an idea that we had that we needed to make. We probably made a prototype, and then ends up being on we end up doing it for a client. But I like to think that I just do what I want to do, and then clients come along, and then we show them some of the projects that we have or some of these ideas, and we make them happen. But for the most part, I'm not thinking about every day about like what I'm going to do for clients. More like, okay, this is kind of what do I want to do, and then that becomes a client project.
Great. Anyone else? Oh, Meyer.
Hey there, two-part question. I always thought that creativity was derived from experience and environment. I was just wondering how you felt about that. Then on the other note, I always thought as far as creative versus evolution, I always wondered, does creation bring about evolution? For example, you created that ball, which this gentleman really enjoyed. There's a scientist who may evolve that ball into something else.
Sorry, the last part?
Your thoughts on those two?
Okay. Well, I forgot the first one. My memory is really bad. I was thinking about the second question.
Environment and experience.
Oh yeah, environment and experience. Are you talking about like the environment, the environment for thinking, or you being exposed to the environment?
You being exposed.
Yeah. Well, I think that your experience in the environment makes a total effect in what you do, and not necessarily today your environment where you're in today, but kind of like your environment that you have been exposed throughout your life. And that's what I was saying today about like everything you lived and everything you enjoyed or suffered or whatever, it would actually affect you in the how you come up with ideas. I think very much like experiences and environments will influence what you do. What I was thinking the other day is like I would if I had been raised in a black box, probably my mind would be blank. Luckily I wasn't, and I can come up with ideas. And the other thing was,
does creation bring about evolution?
yeah, well, like I said today, I think, and I don't want to say creation, I think it's like forming the idea. It is this kind of like magical, instant, like very, very moment that just a little spark of thing in your head. But once you have that idea, then the idea has to evolve. The idea usually is very raw when it starts, but you have to evolve into something else. So I think the ideas evolve into concepts, like in concepts evolve in the way you execute them. And when I came out with Zygote was just the beginning of a family of things that I wanted to do using, and I call it Zygote is kind of like the first cell that is formed for a baby. And then I thought that would be like the smallest interactive piece I could make. It's like a little organism. But then once you start putting them together, imagine you have like a wall of zygotes where there's like a rows and rows of them, and you can make a screen. So that could be more like a cell tissue. And then if you put a camera in one of these balls, then it behaves more like an eyeball, like a retina. And so they had all this family of products that I wanted to develop. And so the idea, that little nugget of idea, was evolving to become something much bigger.
Question, when you talked about your child coming up with that really wonderful little blanket, were you also encouraged as a child to be playful and bring your drawings and everything to your family, and they encourage you? Is it?
No. No, not like it's not. My family did like they didn't mean madly at all. It just. But I actually, my dad is a very creative person. And, I was raised seeing him work. He was working in a completely different space. He used to be, or he was an event organizer. But he was very creative in the way he approached things, and I don't think that was particularly like pushed to be a creative at all. Really, like I for what I remember, I was just making stuff on my own and just loving it and. One didn't really need to share with anybody. I just like doing that, and yeah. I wish I was actually pushed a little bit more. Who knows what I would have done.
I was wondering if you looked at all at how, like, in terms of people interacting, but also how they could positively impact their environment through the interactions you create. So, like, energy, like how could hitting that ball create, like, absorb that pressure or something, or things like that that could interact and produce at the same time and bring about that interaction?
When I look at the work that we do, like we just naturally happens. Most of the stuff that we do is extremely simple, and most of the time there's not like a real goal that makes people feel something. And that's what I was telling today about, like, this sense of wonder. My main goal is not so much to communicate ideas or to change the world. I just want to change people's just their time, their perspective on things for one moment. And I think it will be totally is valuable, but I don't think it's not really what we do, because I think we're really good at making simple things, like really simple, or changing something, and then just have this sense of like, wow, I did this. And then for me, it's very magical, and I wish we could do that in a really, really simple way, but I don't know, maybe we will. Like I don't really know what we're gonna end up doing. Like I just feel like my life has been changing so much always, and it's always going to be changing. And I don't think now we have tangible interaction. I know this type of project, but these type of projects are really hard to. They're not a set. We're not lighting designers. We don't really know what we are. We're just, who knows? Maybe in a year from now I'll be mature enough. Not that I'm not, but I'm more mature that I can actually start doing that kind of stuff.
It seems like your shop has become like a global shop. So how did that start? Like, do you think I'm going to start in Vancouver or Canada, and then you became like sort of a global creative installation, hot creative shop? And what was the breakthrough moment that this happened?
It's funny, but the breakthrough moment was actually the beginning of it. Like when at the time it was just me. When I started with the Zygotes, the breakthrough was in Italy, it wasn't here. So I applied to this festival, like there was this opening, and like I said, I won. I was flown there with some of these zygotes that I had made. They filmed a video, they put it on YouTube. 3 weeks later, I got a call from Chemical Brothers. And really, I think the breakthrough is more like starting in Vancouver. Like now we're finally starting to put installations in Vancouver. We're starting to get like some local calls. Getting out was easy. Getting out, like people just recognize something that is, like a good idea or something that will have an impact. And we get calls every day from all over the place. We go all over the world. We don't get very many calls from here.
So how much of the design is you versus how much is it of your user? What do you, and you should be designed for the user, but like how do you bridge it?
What do you mean how much is the user?
Like, do you design solely with the user in mind, or do you have an idea that you guys want to do and then you try to apply it to the user? How much of that is there?
I kind of design with me in mind. I design with like what I would like to experience, and because I have been working on this stuff, for a long time. And I think I always was like, I just wanted to do what I want, like, what I think I'm going to enjoy. Luckily, because I have worked on the kind of like commercial space for so long, I have a pretty good understanding what other people are going to enjoy too. So I do design with the user in mind, but really I just design the experience that I would, as an spectator or like as a participant, would like to see.
All right, we have time for one last quick question. Anyone?
Hi. I was wondering if, when you think of the idea, do you sometimes get frustrated because you don't have the means to do it? Like, or do you always think of the means first and then how the idea can be accomplished?
We usually can make it happen. If it's maybe a very crude prototype to begin with until the project finds a home and somebody can actually pay for it. But we can usually make it happen. Like I said, most of the ideas are very simple. If you look at the stuff, it's just really, really, really simple stuff. Anybody can do it.
Well, thanks very much, Alex. That was fantastic.
Thank you.